Na, was ist? Kommst mit heute oder nicht?
Nein,
Ach, und warum?
Schwanz kaputt.
Was ist? Willst nicht mehr mit der Alten tanzen?
Was? Ich mit alte Frau tanzen? Du nix, Mann, verheiratet?
Mein Mann ist tot. Schon lange.
Ich nix komisch.
Nein, Sie nicht. Also, ich putze. Ich bin Putzfrau. Was ist denn?
Ali nix schläft. Viel Gedanken im Kopf. Will sprechen mit dir.
Was soll man denn tun mit seiner Zeit? All die Jahre, all die Monate. Und dann ist alles so schnell zu Ende. Und hinterher, was ist gewesen? Mein Gott, ich...
Nix weinen. Bitte. Warum weinen?
Weil ich so glücklich bin und weil ich solche Angst habe.
Nix Angst. Angst nix gut. Angst essen Seele auf.
Ich habe mich verliebt.
Was?
Ja, Christa. Ich habe mich verliebt. In einen Marokkaner, der 20 Jahre jünger ist als ich. Eher mehr.
Du machst wirklich eigenartige Witze, Mama.
Ich habe geheiratet.
Du hast...
Mama.
Komm doch wieder mal zu mir. So auf Besuch.
Vielleicht.
Ich mach dir auch Couscous.
Wer ist denn das, Dadi? Ist es der Großmutter aus Marokko? Was machen die da?
Warum weint du?
Weil ich so glücklich bin auf der einen Seite. Und auf der anderen Seite halte ich das alles nicht mehr aus.
Toll. Und die Haut ist so zart.
Er ist ja auch noch so jung. Aber er ist ein guter Kerl. Wirklich. Ein guter Kerl.
Was hat er denn jetzt?
Ja, manchmal hat er seinen eigenen Kopf.
Bleib da. Ich schlaf so ungern allein, ja?
Emmy! Emmy!
Hello, welcome to Movie Umpers. My name is Bob Sham, and it is, and who are you?
Angela.
The sounds here may be dogs. I'm just so excited
Sure.
because it's, we're leaving Europe. This is our last stop.
You ready to come back home?
Ready to come back home. Yeah, because we start Halloween Hump Fest 2 starting next week. Actually, we will be in Europe unofficially for one more day because on the last day of this month, on next Monday, we are going to be discussing another Lars von Trier movie, Nymphomaniac, a fan favorite, crowd pleasing movie. We watched the entire 5.5 hour long director's cut of both movies back to back, and you get to hear what we say about it next week. And then Tuesday, October 1st, we officially start Halloween Hump Fest 2, our second annual, and it is a Halloween discussion drop 5 days a week with different themes on each day. But we started off right when we have a 6-pack episode where we discuss the George Romero Dead movies, all of them. His first 3 from Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and then the ones he did in the back half of his life that aren't as good, but there's something there in at least one of them. The guy he's hitting 500 though, we'll tell you that, at least. Actually a little over 500 because I don't think that Land of the Dead is that bad. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, he does some good ones still.
But hear us talk about George Romero, the late great George Romero zombie movies to kick off Halloween Hump Fest 2. But this is our last day in Europe. We are hitting up Germany for yet another Rainer Werner Fassbinder movie. We've seen, for this show, we've seen at least 3 Fassbinder movies.
Yes.
Petra von Kant, Fox and His Friends, and this one. On our own, we saw the BRD trilogy, which is Marriage of Maria Vaughn, Veronica Voss, and Lola. Those are good movies, too.
Marriage of Maria Vaughn, specifically, high recommend.
Yeah, that one's a great one. And once you've seen about a half dozen of these movies, you start to see the same players coming in and out. You're getting a feel for him. And he has even more movies than that. The man was very prolific before he died. But this one, I would say, is probably his most famous, his most accessible. But that doesn't mean there aren't, like, great layers to play with here when you're dealing with the post-war German society. This movie takes place, it doesn't say it explicitly, but it takes place after the Black September, when the Olympics were in Munich. This Palestinian group called Black September abducted a lot of Israeli Olympians, and Israel was like, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We can get these people free. The operation went tits up, and the hostages were killed. So that sets a bad tone for Arab immigrants throughout Europe, especially here in Germany. And we feel that play up. They don't specifically recommend that, but if you know a little bit about the history and the time, you know it's playing off of this. And Arab immigration has been coming into Germany for a while, decades now. And, you know, we point out our own weird racial nationalistic streaks here in the United States, but in reality, it's something that's happening all over the Western world, European and North American world, north of Mexico anyway. Well, in Mexico, they have a problem with a bunch of white people moving to Mexico City to try to live a cheaper life. And there's some animosity there, but that's kind of a different thing, right? But we're talking about the movie Ali, Fear Eats the Soul from 1974, directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder. Written by Fassbinder, starring Brigitte Mira, El Hadi Ben Salem, Barbara Valentine, Irma Herman, among others. Cinematography by Jürgen Jürges.
I love that name.
Jürgen Jürges. That is a fun one. This movie is fucking really good. I love this one.
I do too. Like his other movies, looks at class and one group's opinion of another group. In Fox and His Friends, for example, it's folks who have money versus folks who don't. In this one, they're all blue-collar workers. Mm-hmm. But it comes down to race. It's all the color of your skin. They talk so openly and bluntly about their prejudices.
Yeah.
And what they think about these Arab immigrants. It's amazing that this relationship happens at all.
Yeah.
It's accidental. This older woman, widow, goes into a bar to get out of the rain.
Her name is Emmy, played by Brigitte Mira.
Played amazingly by her. She is so good in this movie, but also has her own prejudices and ignorances.
Willful ignorance. As a movie about racism, I mean, Fear Eats the Soul is representing the cynicism of racism, different layers of fear. We got fear of a woman getting older and being alone. We got fear of a society being afraid of Arab immigrants. We've got the fear of Arab immigrants being worried about their status. Are they going to be poor? Or how are they going to be treated when they go out into the world? And then you got the fear of loneliness in other individuals, like people who run the bar, this lady who pines for Ali. Yeah, and you got the fear of being ostracized by your peers when you're trying to live your life, or you make this connection. And I think this is a fantastic movie about racism and race relations, because it shows the casual disconnect where someone will blatantly say something racist, but have this disconnect on how they're contributing to this greater issue. And also this aspect of racism where they feel like it's different when it comes from them, or a racism in the sense of a fetishization of someone, that like the other. There's so many ways to otherize a human being that are presented in this movie, but it's also a genuine love story at the same time. Yeah, this movie is very accessible for Fassbinder's library, but there's so much under the surface, so much rich little details. And I think the thing about that this captures about racism, which is something that Fassbender touches base on throughout his movies, is that sometimes when we talk about racism or people who are racist, we also otherize them in a sense that's like, oh, well, that could never be me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that other people do. And I think that's something, at least in our society, that we've gotten lost. The things that are more obvious, we just kind of double down on how we view that. And like, that's the racist thing, even though it can manifest in so many ways. But I don't think you can actually really truly defeat racism in your society or even come relatively close unless you understand how you yourself are going to be perpetuating these elements of racism, whether it be systemic or personal or whatever. I don't think it's done us any favors because people can just kind of emotionally compartmentalize it in a way. But the reality is it exists in you. Bridget Mears' character, Emmy, comes in. She goes into a bar. She hears foreign music, Arab music playing out. And it's a bar ran by this white lady, but it serves an Arab immigrant population. So there's a variety of songs. There's Arab music, and then there's German music on the jukebox. People are prodding Ali, who's at the bar. They're like, why don't you go dance with the lady?
Well, it's one particular woman. She gets very jealous that he does dance with the woman. She gets very jealous when they get into a relationship. I think she wanted him, and she was picking at him, just trying to get his attention by saying, oh, you should go dance with that lady. And when he actually does, and then he goes and sits with that lady, she gets so mad.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
She's playing games.
You know, the character as played by El Hadi Ben Salim is a lover of Fassbender. Like, he's a gay man.
We've seen him in his other films some, too.
And I thought maybe being gay or bi might be a subplot where that character, but as far as we know, he's not gay. But for some reason, I expected him to admit that he likes men in this movie, even though it didn't happen. But he has a connection with this woman, and they end up hanging out and going out, and he ends up at her place where he makes her food.
He's a gentleman. He wants to walk her home.
And she really enjoys his company, and they end up hooking up.
And she the next morning is so happy, also sad. And she says to him, that's the thing that's so beautiful about their relationship, is how honest they are. And when they're not being honest with each other about how they feel is the only time they have trouble. When they're just telling each other exactly. She says that next morning, I'm so happy and I'm also scared. And he says to her, there's nothing to be scared about. Fear eats the soul.
At one point when she's talking to him, she's talking about her late husband.
Her father was in the Nazi party, and so was she. But her husband was Polish.
She was talking about her family and how her father was in the Nazi party. And she says to Ali, like,
Vater hat alle Ausländer gehasst. Naja, Vater war auch in der Partei, beim Hitler. Wissen Sie, wer das war, Hitler?
Hitler, ja?
Ich war auch in der Partei. Eigentlich alle. Oder fast alle.
Hitler, you know who Hitler is, right? And he's like, yeah, like the whole world knows who Hitler is. It's very
That's
funny.
what I meant about the willful ignorance part, or just naivete of assuming someone might not know, or that it wasn't as huge of a deal as it was.
Yeah, she's talking about it like it was just something that happened and it's over now. But she's also a cleaning lady. She has a very blue-collar job, one that immigrants might be more apt to do nowadays, of course. And she's listening to her friends, and she's fully dating Ali at this point. And the friends are just straight up like talking about how Arabs, they're like 10 to an apartment. They all smell bad. They're straight up just being racist against Arabs.
They also mention one of them knows an older woman who got with a younger immigrant man and how that woman now has no friends. And Emmy tries to say, what if she doesn't need friends? What if they talk and he makes her happy? And they won't even believe that. They just call every woman who would go with an immigrant is a whore, and every immigrant is dirty.
Yeah.
Is how they all talk.
Her and Ali they decide to get married very casually. And Ali agrees to it. And so they go and they have a ceremony and they go to eat at this fancy restaurant. And this restaurant, she again states,
Du, das ist das Lokal, wo der Hitler immer gegessen hat.
Ja.
So von 1929 bis 33. Da wollte ich immer wahnsinnig gerne mal hin. Der Hitler, weißt du?
Hitler, ja.
yeah, I always wanted to eat at this place. Hitler used to eat here from like 29 to 33.
You know who Hitler, right?
is, right? So they go into this restaurant and they order a bunch of
They
expensive
are the
food.
only people in
Yeah.
there. And they don't know how to answer the questions.
And it's got that upscale snobbery in the sense where you don't know if the waiter is judging the fuck out of them or if he's just a snob in general. Like gay hotel concierges. You don't know, do they hate me or are they just gay like that? It's hard to tell. But no one shades like middle-aged Asian women. Am I right, folks? No gay man has shit on an elderly Asian woman.
They'll just tell you you're fat right to your face. There's no tact at all.
You know, God bless them. At least someone's out there keeping it real. But yeah, and her family comes over. One of her son-in-laws is played by Fassbender himself. And we see the lady who was the sub in Petra von Kant is her daughter.
It's weird to hear her speak.
Yeah, it is strange. And she's not all made up. And there's a couple other guys that we see show up over and over again in Fassbender movies. And they straight up, they won't even touch this man. We meet her son-in-law and the daughter early on, and they're just completely assholes.
He is such an interesting character to position opposite of Ali because he has a job that he does not appreciate.
Yeah.
And Ali and all of his Arab buddies, as he always calls them, his buddies, they are struggling to make ends meet. Whereas this German man has a job that he is lying, calling out sick to, doesn't respect his boss because I believe he says he's Turkish.
Right.
And is a total cunt to his wife.
Yeah, Germany has a lot of North African and Turkish immigrants. Her family walks out on her basically as like, we're done with you.
One of her kids kicks her television in.
But what's interesting is you got to remember that, you know, she casually mentions Hitler, she casually mentions her father was in the Nazi party. She raised these children.
And they're only second generation on their father's side.
Yeah. She raised these children. So they're embodying a lot of things that they casually came up around that is infecting this German society. Emmy just does not see that correlation. And when she's dealing with people in her building who are being prejudiced against her, the people that she work with, now that they know she's with Ali, have completely alienated her. And she goes and she eats at this outdoor setting with Ali. And the people who work in this restaurant are all just out on the outskirts, just staring at them. Like the older white woman and the Moroccan man. And she's talking to him about like, I don't know how much I can take this. She's experiencing this prejudice that he experiences day to day. He explains that, you know, the Arab man is just a dog here in Germany. Now she's getting that feeling. She's the woman sleeping with the man that everyone sees him as. She's the woman sleeping with the dog, right? And so she's sitting there like, I don't know how I can handle this. It's like every day. But pressure.
She loves him and she doesn't want to leave him. She gets so worked up that she screams at all of those people just standing watching. Like, fucking stop staring at me.
Yeah.
Alle haben immer so ein widerliches Grinsen. Lauter Schweine. Lauter dreckige Schweine. Glotzt doch nicht, ihr blöden Schweine. Das ist mein Mann. Mein Mann.
This is my husband.
And there's some resentment that comes up where she wants to keep a foot into her own culture, even at the expense of Ali's comfort. Like, he wants her to make couscous. And I think she has it at first, but she's like,
I don't like it.
I don't like it. I don't
Bitch.
want to make couscous. As to imply, like, why don't you kind of do more of the things that I do here?
Well, that shifts because after that scene where they're sitting outside and it's been raining and she's crying, she says, let's go on a trip. Let's get out of here. So we don't know how long they're gone, but they're gone for at least a few weeks because in the time they're gone, things do change. When they come back, people have missed her and the way she used to help them out. And there's people in her building asking her for stuff and taking Ali's help to move things around. The store manager from across the street talks to her and says, hey, come back to my place. The women at work have a new person to hate. So she's now in the group again.
Yeah, a Yugoslavian woman. And she gladly goes back to the friend group to shit on the Yugoslavian woman.
And she starts othering him. She starts treating him differently. He is someone who, she doesn't say, oh, I'll ask my husband to come help you. She says, I'll send him to help you. Now, that might be normal,
Well,
but I get the fact that she ordered him to go help that woman.
She finds a way that people can accept him as a man who's essentially a novelty.
She
And
brings
so-
two of those ladies home.
Yeah, he becomes more like a social exhibit, like,
He's
and
like
so
flexing for
they're
them.
having him flex, and it's really crazy because the love between them is real, but the racism inside them and the fear that brings out is also completely real. These two things are existing at the same time.
The conversation they have in front of him of, oh, I always thought that they were dirty. And she says, oh, no, he showers every day. He's a very clean, and look how strong. And they're touching him, and he immediately leaves. And there's been a couple of times. So after she said, I'm not making couscous, I hate it, he leaves. After they objectify him, he leaves. She just says something about his foreign moods. Infuriating. But in that time, he goes to the bar. And he goes to that blonde woman who owns the bar, who loves these people in this culture. And you know they've had a relationship before, and they sleep together a couple of times. And there's a tenderness between the two of them that is also beautiful. And you do wonder, now she always looks angry and unhappy.
Fassbender's women in his movies, they all look like they've seen some shit.
There's a documentary called Fassbender's Women.
We'll have to watch that.
I want to watch because all these ladies are in it, and they do talk about him. And he's fascinated by the woman unhappy in her situation as well, and she is that woman. And so there is a tenderness, but you get the idea that they go to each other to be sad together.
Yeah, it may not be love there.
No, I don't think it's
he's
love.
not in love with her. He's gone for like a day or two, and she starts to follow him, and he's kind of giving her the hi-hat. He's a little resentful of her, and she goes to his job. One of the guys who works with him makes fun of how she's old, like, oh, did your mother from Morocco? Is this your mother from Morocco or something? And everyone
They
laughs.
might even call her grandma at one point.
And Ali laughs at some point too. And then she just walks away. And then the joke is made again, but this time Ali is not laughing.
You know, he talks about how you just have to deal with what you have to deal with, right? The way they treat you at your job, the way they treat you everywhere. And in my mind, I just thought, oh, this could just be a reason to be rude to him. I don't know his boss. Maybe he has a fine job. It just seems like not a smart thing to do, to go to your husband's job in a country where he has so much difficulty and make a scene.
She goes back to the bar, and he is there, and he's gambling, and he's losing his money. But she comes in, and she sits down in the same seat as she did in the beginning of the movie. She orders a Coke, and then she asks the bartender to play the song at the beginning of the movie. And he immediately gets up. You know, what's interesting here is that Fassbender, it seems like a lot of people he utilizes, and with El Hadi Ben Salem being one of them, they don't seem to be trained actors. There's certain, like Emmy Carouse, Bridget Mira, she's acting really well here, and she's helping to bring the emotional weight to it. El Hadi, he seems a lot more stiff, like he's doing exactly what Fassbender does, but Fassbender knows how to bring out that tenderness in him. And it's got to help by the fact that they are lovers as well, that he knows him personally. So it's funny when you see Fassbender playing the racist son-in-law, being angry that his mother-in-law is dating an Arab man when he is acting against his actual lover in real life, which is funny. But he knows how to bring that tenderness, and El Hadi can provide that. But it's just the timing of it is weird. You can tell in these certain stiff moments, he's not a formal actor, but the tenderness exists. And so when the song comes on, it's like it clicked something in his mind, and he just stands up and he goes, and they do the dance again.
That's why everything you just said a moment ago is why that scene worked so well for me, because you're right. It is though he was somewhere else. That music started, and it is sort of robotic, but he just stands up and goes to her.
And when they're dancing, they have a very honest conversation, and he explains, I've been cheating. And she goes, I know, it doesn't matter. I know you're not being loved. You're maybe, having sex elsewhere, but I know you're not being loved elsewhere. We can love each other. I understand if you need to go do things, but you should come home and be with me all the time. It doesn't matter. I know I'm an older woman. You're a younger man. If we just be open and honest, we can make this work.
Well, he falls in that moment, and he collapses. They go to the hospital, and the doctor explains, and this is what I thought of at the beginning when you were speaking about the stress that he has just being an Arab man in this country. These men, and this is also why I put so much weight on her going to his job, is because the doctor talks about the stress that these men go through, and he had an ulcer rupture, and he said, I'm not allowed to send him to convalescence. All I can do is operate, and then he'll just have to go back to work, and he'll be back in 6 months. He sees this over and over again with these immigrant men who are living in these terrible situations, working these jobs for not enough money, and are just constantly stressed out with everything they're dealing with. And the movie, yes, has that hopeful moment, but then it brings you right back to, it ends with her sitting by his bedside crying while he's unconscious. This movie is beautiful and frustrating. It's frustrating because of all the terrible things that are being said, and the reality of their situation, but that's why it is such a perfect example, the perfect way to explain how racism can be so integrated into a society and even your own actions, and you don't realize.
Or how people can be all up against each other and yet somehow separate at the same time.
That moment at the end when Ali gets up from the table and goes to her, he walks past her chair and stands in the exact same position he did at the very first time they met, behind her to say, would you like to dance? Or dance with me? Image after image. It's like he's taking snapshots also of this time. And I love the way that he does that.
Ali Furious the Soul from 1974. We're going to give it 1 through 5 each combined for best out of 10. I think it's a 5.
I do too.
And the way it's so rare to see a movie that deals with race relations in such a sincere and tender but real way. And I would recommend any movie in which, if you want to watch any movie dealing with race relations within a society, you got to put this one in there as one of the best examples.
It doesn't end on a everything's going to be okay note, because that would not be reality. They're going to be okay, but there's still major problems.
All right, folks, there you go. S tier. I mean, we've had a lot of S tiers this month. It's been banger after banger. That'll settle down a little bit next month for Halloween Hump Fest, just due to the sheer amount of horror movies we'll be discussing. But yeah, it's been a lot of really good stuff all month for our European vacation. And as we head out the door, it's no less now. Ali Furious the Soul by Rainer Werner Fassbinder sits in between After Sun by Charlotte Wells and the Chris Smith documentary American Movie. S tier, one of the greats on our list, at least as good as those, if not better. And that'll do it for our European vacation. It's been fun. We've seen some really great shit, but it's all about the slasher, the scary, the spooky, right around the corner. And we'll see you next week for all of that. Check the shows for links to other places to find us. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know about any other Rainer Werner Fassbinder movies that you would recommend. I'd love to hear them. It was recommended. Petra Von Kant and this one was recommended to me a long time ago. So keep the recommends coming. All right. Outside of those two, Fox and His Friends, the BRD trilogy, what would you recommend from there on? All right. Let's leave.
Au revoir.
Oh, you should know that I've got you on my mind, the secret admirer. I've been watching you. At night, I think of you. I want to be your lady, baby. If your game is on, give me a call, boo. If your love is strong, I give my all to you. At night, I think of you. I want to be your lady, baby. If your game is on, give me a call, boo. If your love is strong,